Hey guys, it's Danny. So today we're gonna talk about how to purchase orchids from eBay. I promised you this guide, you were all very excited to see it, so here it is. I'm not gonna tell you how to create an account on eBay, you're just gonna have to do that yourself. All I can say is read carefully what eBay wants you to agree with. So let's consider that you already have an account on eBay. This guide will work on any eBay you are on. I'm currently on .co.uk because I am in Europe. So this is the front page of eBay. Let's say we're not looking for a specific type of orchid, but just orchids in general. We're gonna search for orchid plant. If you're gonna search for orchids, you're probably gonna find stamps, posters, and all sorts of stuff which are not orchids. And here we have a whole bunch of orchids. So let's browse and let's say this one caught our attention. Let's click on it and find more about it. So the first image of an orchid most probably will be a Google image. This picture right here is really not the way the orchid looks like, the one you're gonna purchase. However, it's a good idea to check the other pictures that sellers provide. I tend to go for sellers who do provide pictures of the orchid they're actually selling. And in this case, we can already see here that we have a whole bunch of pictures with the orchid we're gonna receive. Now, usually with individual sellers, this will be the case. You will have pictures of the actual plants they're selling. Where we're dealing with stores or nurseries, they usually have hundreds of orchids, so they cannot post pictures of each individual one. So in that case, I can understand why they might not have the pictures of the orchids you're buying, but individual sellers really should have pictures of the actual orchids they're selling. And in the additional pictures, you can obviously see if the orchid is in good condition, if it has issues, if it has new growth, whatever you want to look for in an orchid. Also, the additional pictures give you an idea of how big the plants are. So in this example, we don't really know how big plants are. However, other sellers might have a better strategy. So in the secondary picture, you can see the orchid is placed next to a ruler. And this picture gives us a better idea of how tall or big the orchid is. Some sellers place a different object next to the orchid, like a soda can or something else. So again, it gives you an idea of how big the orchid is. I personally tend to prefer these sellers because sometimes pictures can be really misleading. In the picture, an orchid can look very, very big, but in reality, it's not that big. As you can see in this example, the orchid the seller is selling is supposed to be bloom size, but if we take a look at the pictures, we cannot really tell how big the orchid is. It looks kind of tiny. So sometimes we might be misled by the picture, and sometimes we might be presented with a miniature orchid. And this leads me to the next issue. If you're not sure how the orchid you're about to purchase is supposed to look like when it's mature, or how it's supposed to look like in general, Google is your friend. So all you need to do is just copy this name here and take a look on Google and see how this orchid actually should look like. So as you can see from the pictures on Google, this is, or appears to be, quite the miniature orchid. So there is a high chance that the orchid in the listing is indeed a miniature orchid, but it's blooming size. So whenever you're in doubt regarding a particular orchid, if you don't have measurements, or even if you do, just Google it and see how it actually looks like when it's in bloom, how tall it is, and so on. Do a little bit of research before you actually purchase an orchid. Now, speaking about the size of the orchids, not all sellers will have bloom size orchids. Some sellers will have seedling sized or divisions of orchids. Sometimes they might add it in the description, but many of the times they don't. So I don't have an example to show you here, but one of the common orchids you can find on eBay is actually the back bulb orchid. What is a back bulb? Well, let's take a look at this picture. So you see this orchid has two mature pseudobulbs. If I cut one of them, that would be a back bulb. Practically, it's an older bulb of the orchid. Now, orchids can be propagated like this. However, it does take a little bit more time for them to grow. If the back bulb doesn't have roots, it's even worse. If you are okay with buying back bulbs, if you have experience and you know what you're getting yourself into, it's perfectly fine. However, if you don't know what you're purchasing, just remember that one single pseudobulb of an orchid is a back bulb. It doesn't mean it will not catch. However, it does mean it might be more sensitive. It might grow a lot slower slower, and it can take a few years actually until you see a bloom, depending on the orchid. The sad thing is that some sellers do not specify that what you're purchasing is a back bulb, and they will say mature or bloom size. And even though this is politically correct, it came from a mature orchid, it doesn't mean you're gonna have blooms very, very fast. And in most cases, what will happen is that the new growth will be quite tiny compared to the back bulb. So be aware of this when you're purchasing orchids. Another type of orchid very common on eBay is the seedling orchid, and particularly Vanda orchids. A seedling is a very, very young orchid, and in this example we have a Vanda orchid. If you know what a seedling is and if you're okay with buying a seedling, then everything is okay. However, for those of you who don't know, a seedling can take quite a few years until it reaches maturity and has the capacity to bloom. In this example, we have a very tiny Vanda orchid, and if you know how big Vanda orchids are, you can imagine how much time this little guy will take to grow. The problem is, in the title, we don't see anything about seedling. There might be something in the description, but we'll get to that. However, in the title, you'll probably not see if it's a seedling or not, because the seller's point is to sell, not to tell you exactly what it is. So again, the additional pictures come in handy. If you're not sure if this is a seedling or not, just copy paste the name. If you have names, in this example we don't, Google it and see how the plant should look like when it's in bloom, when it's completely mature. Another problem with seedlings that I personally fear is that maybe the seedling is not what it's supposed to be, and I did have this happen in the past. So you're probably gonna wait 3-4 years for this orchid to become blooming size, and when it's gonna bloom you might have the surprise to not be what you actually ordered. It might be something nice, it might not be something nice. So if this is something relevant for you, you should definitely take it into account. Okay, now that we covered the picture aspect of eBay purchasing, let's go to description, another very important thing to know. All orchids should have a description because it will tell you more important things about what you're about to purchase. So in this case, we are learning about the height of the plant, the pot size. Again, this will give us more idea of how big the orchid is. Also, we are informed that this seller posts within EU, and some more information like long-lasting flowers, which I doubt because it's a cattleya, but who knows, I might be wrong. So some information. It could be good, useful, it could not be. Other sellers make a more detailed description. You can actually have it in multiple languages. So here we have a description of the plant itself, and also, very important, the combined shipment. We know that this seller is located in Poland, and also we know that this seller sends worldwide. Now this is more or less relevant. To be fully honest, I would recommend that you only purchase within your territory. What I mean by this, if you live in Europe, try to order from Europe. If you live in the USA, try to order only from the USA. And I'm saying this because some countries have very strict policies when it comes to importing plants, living things. And if you are ordering from a different territory, your plant might be held at the border. In some cases it will, but it only depends on your country, so I cannot generalize. So always look at the location of the seller, where he posts to, so you have an idea where it's coming from, how many days it could take until it reaches you, and if it will actually reach to you. Now that we know where the seller is from, where he posts, let's actually see his feedback. Let's learn a little bit more about him. So you will always have feedback on sellers. You can have positive feedback, neutral feedback, and negative feedback. Of course, you want to stay away from sellers who have mostly negative feedback. Go for the sellers with as less negative or even neutral feedback as possible. However, the fact that a seller might have a few negative reviews doesn't necessarily mean anything. The reviews might not be relevant to you, might not be relevant to your location, or might just be silly. And I have an example actually. So here we see a negative feedback for the seller. Let's just see what it is. Transaction cancelled, no export to Costa Rica. Well, Costa Rica is not in Europe. And if we take a look at the listings of this particular seller, you will see that he only posts to Europe. So you can see how this feedback might not be relevant to you or might not be relevant at all. It is a good idea to always check what the people are saying, even the positive reviews, even the neutral reviews, because they can give you some ideas about what type of problems people had. It's inevitable at some point you will have a transport issue, the package can even get lost on the way, and it's not the seller's fault. However, when you see feedback like the plant is not what it should be, or the seller did not refund me even though the plant is dead, and so on, those are little question marks and you should pay attention to those. In all honesty, the whole feedback situation is not 100% accurate. It cannot be. Let's take, for example, the case of seedlings. A seller can only sell seedlings, so he will get positive feedback because the plants look okay. But if in about 5 years the buyer realizes the plant is not what it's supposed to be, he cannot actually leave any more comments. Maybe in 5 years' time he's not going to use eBay anymore. So it's not necessarily 100% accurate. But it's a good thing to check, and of course if you see more negative feedback than positive, then it's not a good idea. Neutral is not necessarily very good either, but there might be a situation where a refund took place and so on. So on the seller's first page you will also see a button for contact, and I'm not logged in right now, but if you are logged in you can actually contact the seller if you have any questions. And my advice to you is to always contact the seller if you're not sure about something. If you don't know if a plant is blooming size, if it's not specified, if you don't know about transport, or if you just want to ask something about a particular product, always ask before you purchase. And this way you'll avoid a lot of headaches. So from the first page of the seller, you can use the contact tab and learn more about what you're about to buy. Now let's go back to shipping. Some sellers have combined shipping. What does this mean? So let's look here. This orchid costs £14. However, this is not the final price you will pay. Transport, postage will be added as well. So the price for this orchid will be £14 plus £6.50. So if you would purchase 10 orchids, theoretically you should pay £65 for transport. That's a little bit ludicrous. So what sellers do is combine shipment. If you purchase 10 orchids, you will not pay £65. You will actually pay a lower price. And in the description, sometimes they do give you the shipping price for the weight of the package. In this case, we have €10 for 3-4 small plants. Now, if you want to buy multiple orchids and you're not sure exactly how much the transport will cost, just contact the seller, tell him exactly what you want to buy, and he will give you an estimate of the shipping price. But not all sellers combine shipping. There are sellers which do not. So in this case, we have nothing regarding combined shipping. And I did purchase from the seller, and indeed there was no combined shipping, so I paid transport for each one. However, as you can see, postage is cheaper here, so I didn't pay too much, but you can understand how if you buy 10 or 20 orchids from the seller, your shipping price will be out the roof. So even if you don't see something about combined shipping, you can obviously contact the seller, tell him about your intention of purchasing 1,000,000 orchids, and maybe you'll get a discount on the postage. The key word here is contact the seller, talk to the seller, figure things out. You can always do that. Nobody will mind they get contacted about a possible order. Okay, now let's talk about the types of listings sellers might have. As you can see, we have a buy it now option or add to basket. What this means is you're practically shopping just like you would on any other online shop. You put everything to a basket, and then when you're ready, you proceed to checkout, you buy everything at once. Things are pretty easy and straightforward. However, there are also auctions on eBay. So here we have a few auctions. Let's click on one of them. And we can see here that we have an orchid. The starting price is £8, 0 bids. This means nobody actually increased the price, nobody bid it. How do auctions work? It's a little bit elusive. So each person who is interested in purchasing this orchid will enter a maximum bid. Let's say, how much are you willing to pay for this orchid? So let's say I want to pay £15. I submit my bid and probably I'll be the highest bidder. However, the price of this orchid will not increase to 15 because I added 15 here. Since I've never sold anything on eBay, I'm not really sure exactly with how much it will increase. I have been a shopper though, so I can tell you it will probably increase with 50 cents or £1. So because there are no other bids, I am the only person who's bidding. I'm bidding 15 because this is the maximum price I just want to bid. The price will change to £8.50 or £9. And for a while, I will be the highest bidder, the only bidder actually, but if somebody else wants to purchase this orchid, he sees the price, which will be £8.50 or £9, he might want to pay 10. Well, in that moment, the person will be prompted with a message that he has been outbid. Why? Because my maximum bid was 15, which is bigger than him. What will happen though is that the price of the orchid will change from what it initially was to £10 because this is what he bidded. He did not outbid me, but somebody was willing to pay £10 for this orchid, so this is what the price will be. Let's say a different person wants to bid, and he will bid 13. Again, he will be prompted with the message that he has been outbid because I bidded more. My maximum bid was 15. However, the price of the orchid will change to 13 because this is what they bidded. And so on and so forth. As long as I am the maximum bidder, no matter how many people bid below my maximum bid, they will get prompted with a message that they have been outbidded. They have the option to bid more, but this depends on each person. If they bid more and they outbid me, they will become the highest bidder. I will get the message that I have been outbidded, and the orchid will cost £1 more probably than what I bidded. Even if somebody bids 30 here and I bidded 15, the price of the orchid will appear as £16. I really hope I'm coherent right now. Now, in a perfect world, let's say I bid 15 here, and for a whole week I am okay, I'm the highest bidder. However, in the last minute of the auction, you can see we have a time here, the clock is ticking down. When the auction reaches its end, in the last minute, people usually start to bid, and they bid so much that eventually I will get outbidded. So what people do, they might bid something tiny. In this case, I might bid 9, 10, let's say, and it will stay like that for a week. However, in the last minute or 30 seconds, everybody will start to bid. Why this happens? Well, because we really want to get that orchid, and as late in the auction as possible. If you bid, you will not give other bidders time to submit a bid or increase their bid, so practically you're out-timing them. I'm personally not a fan of auctions, but it doesn't mean they're not fun. However, keep in mind that orchids that are sold on auctions might be sold for a bigger price than normal. Why? Well, because there's that adrenaline, people want to be in competition with other people, you might get carried away, and you might pay more than what the actual orchid is worth. If you search for this orchid, let's say, on eBay, you might find it at a seller with a buy it now option for a lot cheaper actually. However, this is pretty much how auctions work. It took me a little bit of time to figure it out, but yeah, it's a little bit elusive. You need to try a few to get adjusted to how they work. Very important, let's say I bid 15 but I have been outbid, I will not have to pay anything. Only the highest bidder, the person who actually wins the auction, will pay the final price. Everybody else will not. If you are lucky enough to win an auction, you will have to pay after the auction is over. Speaking about payment, let's say you purchased an orchid, you received it, and it was not in good condition. Usually what you have to do is take a picture immediately. Don't do anything to the orchid, take a picture if it's damaged. Contact the seller and send him the image as well. And on eBay, you will have an option, very easy, to upload an image to your message. This way you prove to the seller that what he sent to you is not in good condition, and you can get a refund. If you have problems with sellers, you can open a case with eBay, but also with PayPal if you have a PayPal account connected to your eBay account. I've never been through a dispute on eBay. I have been on PayPal. Everything went okay, and in 30 days I had my money. But usually if you have a bad experience, either eBay or PayPal will most likely cover for your loss. They will refund you, but there are always cases when refunding is just not possible. So try out a few sellers, maybe look for reviews on the internet, and when you find a good seller, you will have more courage to order more. And what I like to do is when I have a seller that I really like, I follow him. He will have a page on my eBay summary, my account, and I can always check what he's selling. Okay, now let's talk about some things to avoid on eBay. This is slightly personal as well, take that with a grain of salt, but I'm talking out of my own experience. So first of all, as I was saying in the beginning, avoid sellers which do not show pictures of the actual orchids they're selling. If you're purchasing from a nursery or a store, this is understandable, they have hundreds of orchids, but when you're dealing with individual sellers, they need to have the picture of what they're selling. Also, when you find an orchid for sale from a person who doesn't usually sell orchids, again, it's a question mark. I wouldn't purchase it. Maybe somebody purchased an orchid and it's dying and they want to sell it on eBay. Who knows? Maybe they didn't care properly for that orchid. Maybe it's in a bad condition. If they only have one orchid for sale and the rest of the things are, I don't know, electronics, there might be something wrong with that orchid. I personally don't trust it. Of course, look at the feedback of the seller and also the location of the seller. As I was saying, try to order from your territory. If you want to risk it with other territories, do so at your own risk, but be aware that orchids might not actually reach you. And also stay away from scams. You might not be able to detect scams right away, but I'll just show you a few examples. So here we have a seller which sells us rare monkey face orchid seeds. Now the monkey face we see here is a Dracula orchid, multiple species. These are some pictures from Google, but what's funny is that he actually has an option to select the pattern. And we have depressed monkeys, big mouth monkeys, it's just the funniest thing ever. The problem with this listing is that the Dracula orchid is an epiphyte orchid, and orchid seeds, epiphyte orchid seeds, do not sprout in soil. It's a very complicated process. I'll add an annotation on the screen right now. You can learn more about orchid seeds, but when it comes to epiphyte orchid seeds on eBay, never purchase anything that looks like this. Another very funny listing is a Phalaenopsis seed bonsai plant. I'm not really sure what this is supposed to mean. However, the seller again has some patterns, some colors. You can choose the blue orchid. If you're acquainted with orchids, you already know the blue orchid is actually a painted orchid. It's artificially colored, but you can purchase the seeds, obviously. And my favorite one from this listing is the pansy looking like one. And a final listing, this seller again sells us some seeds, but he shows us a picture of the seeds. And I have to tell you, whatever looks like this is definitely not epiphyte orchid seeds. Orchid seeds look like dust. If you ever purchased orchid seeds that you can visibly see and hold individual ones between your fingers, then they're not orchid seeds. And pretty much that's the story with eBay. Anyway, if I missed out something, if I didn't explain it properly, just let me know in a comment down below. I'll try to make things clear. I'm not sure if you understood that auction part thing. And if you want to purchase from eBay, the best thing to do is try to search for reviews for particular sellers on forums or on the internet, or ask your friends if they ever bought or in your orchid society. Anyway, I do have some favorite sellers as well. My most favorite one at the moment is this particular one. I keep buying from him, and that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. Hope this was useful. Feel free to let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have questions or other suggestions for videos, I'm all ears. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like to see other orchid videos and stay up to date with my projects. I post on a daily basis, and if you ever want to send me a letter, do so at the address you see on the screen and in the description below. Choose an option on the screen if you like to visit my website orchidnature.com or watch an orchid tutorial. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to rate, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Bye!